In the summer of 1994, in a crowded little San Francisco tavern, a whole room full of strangers roared together at a World Cup match. But one small boy in the corner heard none of it. He was deaf, and he had grown up watching the entire world celebrate from behind a quiet wall of silence. His father had brought him there because they had no television at home. The boy loved the game with all his heart, but he could only ever watch the picture, never the sound, never the roar, never the cheer, never quite the feeling of being a part of it all. So he sat at the very edge of it, the way he always did, on the outside, looking in. Until a man at the next table happened to notice him, a man with a half-finished drink and the kindest of eyes. A man whose face the whole world knew. And what that man did next, without speaking a single word the boy could not understand, would stay tucked inside that little boy's heart for the rest of his life. To understand that afternoon, you first have to understand the boy. He had been deaf since he was very small, and he had grown up in a world that was, for him, almost entirely silent. He was a bright and watchful child, far more observant than most, because when you cannot hear, you learn instead to see everything. He read faces the way other children read their picture books, and he had learned very young exactly what it felt like to be just slightly outside of every room he was ever in. And yet he loved the game of soccer with a quiet and fierce devotion. He could not hear the commentators, or the roar of the crowd, or the crack of boot on ball, but oh, he could see it all. He could see the artistry and the speed and the sudden, dazzling flashes of brilliance. To him, soccer was a kind of poetry that needed no sound to be beautiful. And in that magical summer of 1994, with the World Cup unfolding on American soil, he wanted nothing so much as to be a part of it. But there was no television set in their small home. His father worked hard and long for everything the two of them had, and a television had always been a luxury just a little out of their reach. So whenever the biggest matches came around, the father would do the one thing he could think to do. He would take his son gently by the hand, and the two of them would walk down to the corner tavern where a boxy old television sat mounted high in the corner, and they would watch the game together from a quiet little table near the back. On this warm summer afternoon, the cozy neighborhood bar was packed shoulder to shoulder. The World Cup had swept up the entire city, and people who had never watched a single match were suddenly crowded in together, cheering and groaning and leaping up out of their chairs as one. The whole room was alive with sound, a great, joyful, deafening wall of it. And right in the middle of all that glorious noise sat one small boy who could not hear a single note. He watched the screen with his bright and careful eyes, and he understood the game perfectly well. But all around him the room was sharing in something he simply could not reach. When the crowd gasped, he felt the very air in the room change, but he did not always know quite why. When they roared, he saw the mouths fly open and the arms shoot up, and he would turn his head, always a half second behind everyone else, trying so hard to catch up to a joy that all the others seemed simply to breathe in. He was well used to it, but still, always, he was on the outside of it. His father watched him out of the corner of his eye, the quiet way that fathers do, and his heart ached its old, familiar ache. He loved that boy far more than his own life. He would have given absolutely anything in the world to lift him up and over that invisible wall just one time, to let him feel for a single golden afternoon what it truly was to be right there in the very heart of the joy, instead of forever watching it from the silent edge. But what the father did not know was that 2 tables away, someone else had been watching too. Not the match, the boy. A man sat there with a half-finished drink in front of him, and he had been quietly observing the little boy in the corner for some time now. The careful eyes, the half-second delay, the small, earnest face trying so very hard to belong. And something deep inside that man, something warm and kind and instinctive, had quietly begun to stir. The man rose from his table and made his way over, easy and unhurried, and crouched right down beside the boy until the two of them were eye to eye. The father startled, half rising from his chair in surprise, for he knew this face in an instant. Everyone in America knew this face. It was Robin Williams, the beloved comedian who made his home in this very city, now settling onto his heels to look one small deaf boy gently and warmly in the eyes. Robin smiled at the boy, a great, warm, wide-open smile that needed no translation in any language on earth. The boy blinked back up at him, surprised and just a little wary. And then Robin did something no soul in that crowded room would ever forget. He turned toward the television, pointed up at the match, and began with nothing but his face and his hands and his whole wonderfully expressive body to tell the boy the entire story of the game. When a player went streaking down the wing, Robin's eyes flew wide with the thrilling speed of it, his hands racing through the air. When a shot sailed just wide of the post, he clutched his own heart and staggered backward in great mock agony, and the boy's solemn little face cracked open into a startled, delighted grin. When a defender made a clumsy tackle, Robin instantly became that defender, all tangled feet and flying elbows, until the boy was shaking with silent, helpless laughter. He was not merely describing the match, he was performing the whole of it, just for him, and the boy understood. For the very first time in his entire young life, in a room full of strangers, someone was letting him in on every bit of it. The joke, the drama, the heartbreak, the thrill, all of it, in a language he could read just perfectly. He did not need to hear a single word. Robin's face had become the commentary. Robin's whole body had become the roar of the crowd. And the invisible wall that had always stood between this boy and the rest of the room simply, quietly, and completely fell away. When the crowd in the bar gasped, Robin gasped right along with them, hugely, so that the boy could see the gasp and share in it. When the crowd groaned, Robin groaned with his entire face, and the boy groaned too and laughed. And when at long last a goal was scored, the whole tavern erupted into joy, and Robin sprang up and threw his arms around the boy and lifted him clean up, and the little one felt that great roar not in his ears, but in the strong arms around him, and in the pure, shining joy on this kind man's face. And then something quietly remarkable began to happen around that little room. The other patrons, lost in their own cheering, started one by one to notice what was unfolding in the corner. They saw the famous man down on his knees, pouring his whole magnificent gift into one small, deaf boy. And slowly the cheering softened, and people began to smile, and some grew very still, and more than a few quietly wiped at their eyes. For they were watching something far more beautiful than any soccer match. They were watching one human being reach the whole way across a silence simply to touch another. And here is the truest thing of all. Robin never once made that boy feel like a project, or a charity case, or an object of anyone's pity. He made him feel like the single most important person in the room. He was not putting on a show for the crowd. His back was turned to every one of them. Each ounce of his attention, all that boundless warmth, was aimed at the boy alone. For that 1 hour, the most famous man in San Francisco belonged completely to one child the rest of the world had overlooked. The boy's father stood off to the side and watched, and he found that he could not speak at all. He had spent years aching to give his son this one simple thing, the feeling of being on the inside of the joy. And here was a perfect stranger, a man who owed them nothing, giving it away freely, with such tenderness that it stole the breath from the father's chest. He pressed one hand hard over his mouth and let the tears run down, and did not wipe a single one away, because some moments are simply too holy to touch. When the final whistle blew at last and the match was over, Robin sat himself down properly beside the boy, and the two of them carried on their wordless conversation a good while longer about the goals and the near misses and the players they each liked best, all of it told in faces and gestures and shared silent laughter. The boy, who was so very often the quiet one, was lit up now from somewhere deep inside, more wholly alive than his father had seen him in a very, very long time. And before he finally left, Robin reached for a paper napkin and a pen, and he sketched out a quick, funny little cartoon of the two of them watching the game together, and pressed it carefully into the boy's hands as though it were the greatest treasure in the world. Then he turned to the father, and the two men spoke briefly and quietly. Robin asked a few simple, gentle questions in that easy way he had, and the father, still overcome, answered them without quite knowing why. And then, with one last warm grin for the boy, Robin was gone, melting back into the bright San Francisco afternoon. The boy clutched that paper napkin the whole way home, and he would not let it go for anything. And that very night, for the first time anyone could remember, he was the one trying to tell his father a story with his hands and his face, acting out the entire glorious afternoon, the staggering man, the great mock agony, the goal, the strong arms lifting him up high. His father laughed and nodded and held his boy close against him. He thought it was the most wonderful gift his son had ever been given. He did not yet know that there was still more to come. Several days later, a delivery truck pulled up quietly outside their small home. Two men carried in a large box, and inside that box was a brand new television set, bigger and finer than anything the little family had ever owned in their lives. The father stood frozen in the doorway, certain to his bones that there had been some sort of mistake. But there, taped neatly to the top of the box, was an envelope with his son's name written across it, in a warm and unmistakable looping hand. Inside was a note, and it was short, and it was gentle. It said that every kid who loves this game deserves a front row seat to watch it, right at home, as many times as his heart desires. It told the boy to keep right on watching, and to keep on seeing all the wonderful things that the people who only ever listen so often miss entirely. And it was signed, simply, with the name of the kind man from the tavern, the very one who had told him the whole story of the match, without ever once saying a word. Robin. The father sank slowly down into a chair, the note trembling there in his hands. And he understood it then. The quiet conversation in the bar had not been idle at all. Robin had been gently gathering up the few small things he needed to do this very thing. A man with every reason in the world to simply sit back and enjoy his great fame had instead noticed one deaf boy on the edge of a crowded, noisy room, and had decided, quietly and entirely, to pull the whole wide world a little closer to him. And so, from that day forward, the boy watched every match he possibly could, right there in his very own front room, with his father settled in close beside him. And every time, just before the game began, he would do the very same thing. He would scrunch up his whole face and throw both hands high into the air in a perfect imitation of the staggering, gasping, joyful man from the tavern. And his father would laugh until his sides ached, every single time. It became a private language all their own, a gift that simply kept on giving. And the boy kept that little napkin cartoon, too, framed carefully upon his bedroom wall. Long, long after the drawing itself had faded soft and pale with the passing years. It was, he would always say, the day the world had finally, truly let him in. And not because of the television set, fine and generous as it was, but because of that 1 hour when a stranger had knelt down in a noisy room and chosen to speak with absolutely everything he had in the one and only language that boy could perfectly understand. He never did see Robin Williams again in person, but he followed his films and his work all down through the years that came, and every single time that brilliant, kind, beloved face appeared upon a screen, the boy, and then the young man, and then at last the grown man, would feel a great warmth bloom right in the center of his chest, and remember the afternoon that he had been made to feel like the most important person in the whole wide world. For some kindnesses are never, ever forgotten. They quietly become a part of who we are. And what that man truly gave him, in the end, was so much more than a television set, or a funny little napkin drawing, or even one golden afternoon. He gave him a memory to reach for on every lonely day that ever came after. Living proof, carried always in the heart, that the wall of silence he lived behind was never so high that it could not be crossed by someone who truly wished to cross it. He gave that boy the certain knowledge that he could be seen and known and welcomed in. He gave him, quite simply, the gift of belonging. When the world lost Robin Williams in the summer of 2014, it mourned a comic genius, a brilliant actor, a man who had made whole generations of us laugh until we cried. But somewhere in San Francisco, one deaf man grieved for something no headline ever thought to mention. For the gentle stranger who once told him the whole story of a soccer match using nothing but his face and his great kind heart, and who taught him, in a single hour, that he was never really on the outside at all. So tonight, please remember the boy who watched in silence. Remember that the kindest thing any of us can ever do is to meet another soul in the language of their own heart. And if you know someone who feels unseen or unheard or just outside the circle, go to them and let them in. Thank you for sitting with us today. Until next time, please take good care of one another.